inside this adorably tiny gaming PC, I have AMD's brand new 5600G APU. This is a 6-core 12-thread Vega 7 graphics equipped processor from AMD, and I'm just gonna tell you straight up, this thing is probably my new favorite CPU. Now, I'm gonna tell you right off the bat, I did buy this with my own money. I went to Micro Center and paid $260 for it. Some people would like to know that, so I'm gonna tell you straight up. Now, this thing is very loud right now because of a small issue with the power supply I'm working to rectify, but here's the deal. There will be a video about building this PC, and as well as my recommendation for the perfect use case for a CPU like this, and that'll be coming out either before or after this video. If it's already out, sorry. If it's not, well, sorry as well. But stay tuned for that, or hope you enjoyed that, depending on if it's out already. So, first things first, I want to talk about the CPU real quick, then we're going to get right into the gaming benchmarks to back up my claims that this thing is amazing. But the gaming benchmarks only tell half the story. See, here's the thing. The reason this CPU is so amazing, in my opinion, is because not only does it have Vega 7 graphics, which are, okay, but they are paired with a 6-core, 12-thread gaming beast of a CPU. This CPU is a slightly clocked down version of the Ryzen 5 5600X, one of the best gaming CPUs that's out there right now. Why is this important? Well, unlike the AMD APUs of yesteryear, with the measly 4 or 8 threads on pretty unimpressive 34 and 3200 Gs, this thing is actually good for being a CPU, which means that if you buy this first and are unable to get a dedicated graphics card, you can still use this until you can get a DGPU, and then it's just a slot-in upgrade, and you still have a really powerful gaming CPU. And especially right now, where even cards like the 1660 Super are going for double the price that they should be. You know, you find these for $400 on eBay right now, which is totally stupid. CPUs are pretty much normally priced right now, and you can pick one of these up for the retail of $260 and use it until you get a dedicated graphics card. So that's why it's such a great thing. And then when you get a graphics card, you just slot in, boom, you have a great gaming system. So that is just straight up my reasoning for why this thing is amazing, because it's something I've been recommending for a while, but I haven't been able to get my hands on one because I didn't want to buy a whole pre-built just to get one. So finally they've released as a standalone product, and I couldn't get my hands on the 4th gen versions, you know, 4600G and stuff like that, so we moved on to the 56. Now, the 5700G, or 58, whichever one it is, does have the Vega 8 graphics, and I really want them, but it's $100 more expensive for the 8-core CPU, so we went with this one. So, let's move right into the gaming benchmarks, and I'm just going to say right now, I am absolutely baffled, and I don't even use that word that often. I love this little computer so much, although I'm not a fan of the fan noise. I gotta fix that. I'm replacing that PSU fan. I got a bad bearing. But I'm gonna watch the benchmarks on this rig because it's so adorable to me. So starting off with the classic Rainbow Six Siege on our plane elimination benchmark, and wow, this is already amazing. Now this is 1080p low preset, which does actually set a resolution scale slider, but this is just the low preset, so it can be, you know, copied at home and replicated. And we're seeing averages over 80 FPS in a Rainbow Six Siege. This is 1080p low preset, and we're seeing above 80 FPS, and that is freaking amazing. Our GPU, as you can see, is loaded up to 100%. That is our limit. Now, our VRAM does say 482 megabytes. That is misleading. The GPU in Windows reports 512 megabytes of VRAM, but I have 64 gigabytes of DDR4 in the system, and the iGPU will share your system memory, so it does have about 32 gigabytes of VRAM readily available, and it is DDR4 3600. It's not the fastest that exists, but it's the fastest that's reasonable to buy, so definitely giving this the best chance of being great, and great it is. Again, 80 plus FPS throughout the whole mission, and 0.1% lows that are above 60 FPS. It was smooth, easy to play, and if you're a Rainbow Six Siege player, and you can't get your hands on a graphics card but really want to play, this might be a great option. Now let's move on. Moving right along to Counter-Strike Global Offensive, I really quick want to just touch on CSGO because this is actually a prime use case for something like this. You know, let's say you're a person who plays, you know, the new Call of Duties, but you also play Counter-Strike Global Offensive. Well, this would be the kind of CPU you should buy now to play CSGO, and then when you get your graphics card, you can hop on the new Call of Duty, Cyberpunk, whatever you want to play. Because we're getting, depending on the map, 100 to 200 FPS average. Now, this is actually a deathmatch lobby with real players, so, you know, this isn't like just a bot match where we're getting, you know, best case scenario. This is literally just a normal match. Might as well be a competitive match. And we're getting respectable FPS, but here's the kicker. Unlike a card such as this GT 1030, which is a popular card for people who want to play competitive games, they will pick up cards like this and use them. It supports high refresh rate. The GT 1030 does not support dual link DVI or HDMI 2.0, so it only supports refresh rates up to 60 Hertz on 1080p. Now, the board will be your limitation here, whatever motherboard you have, but the CPU has no such limitation. So, on our Asus ROG B550i, again, you shouldn't have to get such a high-end board, it's just what they had in stock at Micro Center when I bought the CPU. We are getting high refresh rate, 144 Hertz out of our DisplayPort, which means if we're getting 200 FPS in CSGO, we can actually see 144 FPS. Now, this is not lowest settings, although this is mostly low settings. You can actually go lower with these at 1080p and still have a playable experience. But again, this is absolutely playable, and I would highly recommend it if you're looking to buy a rig right now and get a graphics card later. This is competitively playable, and some people's dedicated graphics systems would probably be worse. Like I said, GT 1030 is not great for this. Now, moving along quickly to Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. Now, this is a surprise, because here's the thing. At 1080p, all low settings, we are only getting about 30 to 50 FPS. The averages are not amazing, and you know, it's very, and this is Nuketown, so this is kind of best case scenario with bots. So, yeah, it's not really super amazing. But it was smooth. We didn't have frame dips really at all, except for right at the start of the match when everything was loading in. But besides that, like, this was very playable. But again, you have to settle for about 30 to 50 FPS, you know, cinematically playable at best. But if we drop our resolution scale down to half, which is way more extreme than it needs to be, but let's just get best case scenario. You could set your settings between, you know, that mark. All of a sudden, we're getting an average of 92 FPS. This is way more than playable, and this is actually freaking amazing. I mean, look at this. We're getting almost 100 FPS at some parts in the game. Yeah, like, yeah, it doesn't look super amazing, but it's not unplayably bad. And you could tune your settings 75% resolution scale, anywhere between that, to get between 60 and 100 FPS. This is entirely respectable and entirely playable, which is absolutely, I can't even believe it. I'm saying the same words all over again because I literally cannot believe that an APU is getting better performance than some dedicated graphics cards. Now, one thing I would like to note, our RAM usage goes up to like 18 gigabytes. Because that's VRAM mixed with RAM usage. This game already uses like 12 gigs of RAM without having to use shared memory. So, fair warning, I would recommend 32 gigs if possible. But again, a 16 gig system, you know, probably shouldn't be too bad, but you do want some good, you know, a good amount of RAM. Now, finally, moving on to the golden game, as we'll call it. Grand Theft Auto 5. Normal settings, so that is like their low preset, 1080p, no resolution scaling whatsoever, stuff like that. And I don't even know what to say. I mean, we're getting 60 plus FPS at almost all parts in the map. Cruising around, driving, shooting, playing the game. We're getting a fully responsive experience. I was playing it, and it was extremely responsive. Our 1% and 0.1% loads were also very respectable at 56 and about 49 FPS, which is pretty high for lows. And at some points on the map, we could actually see 100 plus FPS, but really, our average is around 70, which is, like I said, if you have a 75 Hz display, you'll be playing absolutely fine, seeing all your FPS, which is super awesome. Not to mention, again, the high refresh rate support, so you could really scale infinitely with this CPU, because another thing is, on the APU side, so on the older APUs like the 34 and especially 3200G, you could actually see in games like Call of Duty, CSGO, and GTA 5, you could see CPU bottlenecks even though you're using integrated graphics. You won't be seeing that on this. You actually have a ton of room with your CPU, as we're boosting to almost 4.5 gigahertz, which is freaking insane. This is kind of awesome. I have to say, this is pretty freaking cool. So, that's all I really have for you guys. Let's turn this thing off for our final words. Building a system this tiny is not that easy. You need a CPU that can be cooled by something like this Noctua low-profile cooler. You need to use ITX stuff, and you need a graphics card that fits in, well, basically this is your max length. And actually, you could use like a 2060 in that. But an APU is perfect for a case like this. Now, you could also use this in like a full-size ATX build while you're waiting for your graphics card, and probably wouldn't have too bad of an experience. You might even keep it for longer. So, if you want my recommendation, what you should be doing is, if you need a PC now, but you think you're gonna have to sacrifice your CPU in order to get any sort of GPU, a GT710, a 1030, a 1660, whatever, my recommendation, go for this CPU instead, 5600G. You'll save yourself a lot of money, and you'll have an amazing gaming CPU when the time comes to upgrade your graphics card. So, hope you guys kind of enjoyed my little review and testing of the 5600G that I literally was, once I saw it in stock, I literally drove right down to Micro Center. I was so excited to review this thing because I think it's such an awesome choice, especially for the budget gamer out there. Hope you guys kind of enjoyed. Thank you guys so much for watching. Links in the description below to anything that I don't know, you want, who cares. Love you guys, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.